2017 was an amazing year for video games. Mario Odyssey, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Persona 5, Cuphead, Sonic Mania, Yakuza 0, Horizon Zero Dawn, Divinity Original Sin 2, Nier Automata, Splatoon 2, Resident Evil 7, Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and yet within this crowd of great games was Hollow Knight. There was buzz about Hollow Knight back in 2017, but at the same time it does seem like it got overshadowed by the other giants within the gaming space. But almost 10 years have gone by and the game has proven to age gracefully, and the game's main character becoming another mascot within gaming. As of right now, the Knight hasn't reached the same recognition as Mario, Pikachu, Master Chief, or Pepsi Man. If anything, he's a mascot within the indie game scene. But how is it that 7 years later, a video game made by 3 people is able to rival the AAA giant that we are all familiar with? I have 3 possible answers: timing, presentation, and game feel. Since the early 2010s, there has been a shift as to how video games are monetized. You pay full price for a game, and any additional content produced would have a fee attached to it. Around this time, indie games began to make a name for themselves, with notable names such as Minecraft, Shovel Knight, and Undertale. Meanwhile, the AAA gaming industry only began to become more greedy with overpriced DLCs, virtual currencies, loot boxes, and paying for conveniences. Flash forward to 2017, EA would be ridiculed by the internet as they tried to defend Star Wars Battlefront 2's monetization by proclaiming that it gives players a sense of pride and accomplishment. There was also something else about single-player games being dead, which is ironic because the best games of 2017 were single-player games. During that same year, Hollow Knight had officially launched with the price tag of $15, and 4 additional DLCs would be later released for free. That's right, a game with only 3 developers and funded through a Kickstarter campaign was able to produce a full game cheaper than its competition and gave 4 DLCs for free. Compare this to Breath of the Wild, a full $60 game with a single DLC pass for an additional $20. As a consumer, this must have been the best $15 you could have ever spent. In present day 2024, the monetary practices within the gaming industry has not changed. Some would say that it's only gotten worse. With AAA games becoming more expensive, soulless, and disappointing, indie games are now being praised for their passionate developers and being easier on your wallet. Through these past few years, you may have seen YouTube videos that compare the state of AAA games and indie games. And a common face in the thumbnails for these videos is the Knight, further cementing his recognition and status as a gaming mascot for indie games. A contributing factor to the Knight's memorability is his simple design: a large white head, a slender black body covered with a gray cloak. Plenty of other characters, including Hornet and Elderbug, have similar characteristics, and even more complex designs are still simple and readable, as most enemies you encounter are composed of round shapes. This gives the game a very soft and cutesy feeling to them, which is a stark contrast to the dark environments you traverse through. The world of Hollow Knight feels empty, broken, and disconnected, as every zone is painted in their own distinct, dull, and muted color palette. The somber white, blacks, and blues of Dirtmouth, the disgusting yellows and browns of the Fungal Waste, the lifeless grays and blacks within the Ancient Basin, or the almost colorless pitch black Deep Nest, feeling like an endless void as you walk through it. There are a few exceptions though, Crystal Peaks is a cavern filled with luminous pink crystals, and the abundance of green vegetation within the green path still gives a semblance of life. But the crystal and thorns and their sharp edges within these two locations still provide a sense of danger rather than comfort. Despite the primary use of dark colors, there is enough visual clarity for the player to not get lost. The knight has his big head and a ring of light that surrounds him. Other characters such as Hornet and Grim wear vibrant colors, and most enemies you encounter have glowing orange eyes. So throughout your playthrough, you should never take damage from something that you cannot see. Combine all of this with environmental storytelling. There's not a lot of dialogue in Hollow Knight, and the little that we get are vague hints to the world's history and calamity. If you want to learn more, then you need to pay attention to the areas you travel through and put the puzzle pieces together yourself. Most enemies being associated with the color orange is explained in the lore. This cool looking statue is not just here to look cool. It's also not a statue. The Grim Troop and Godmaster DLCs added new characters and areas to expand the already existing lore. But if you don't care for the game's narrative or world building, you can just simply play the game without being held back by tutorials or heavy dialogue. Hollow Knight is a Metroidvania, a platforming subgenre of video games that derives its name from Metroid and Castlevania. Whereas platformers like Mario and Sonic emphasize momentum and precision, Metroid and Castlevania instead utilize action and exploration. But the exploration aspect of Metroidvanias does have a necessary evil: backtracking. Gamers these days tend to complain about backtracking since repeatedly traversing the same routes and visiting the same locations eventually becomes visually uninteresting, and sometimes it is purposely used to artificially extend a game's length. But Hollow Knight, and by extension other Metroidvanias, tend to get a pass when it comes to backtracking due to power-ups or special items. Throughout your playthrough in Hollow Knight, you will find certain platforms and ledges that you cannot yet reach. It is not until you receive the abilities to dash, double jump, or wall climb, you can then reach those uncharted territories. This is how Metroidvanias encourage you to explore the world. Find a location, memorize it, receive a power-up in another area, come back, and you will be rewarded with treasure or an entire new section of the map. But these new abilities to dash, double jump, and wall cling are not just useful for exploration. They are especially useful in combat. The dash from the Mothwing Cloak allows a hit-and-run playstyle. The double jump from the Monarch Wings lets you strike enemies from above. And the wall cling from the Mantis Claw is mainly an evasive tool, as you can just wait out certain boss mechanics. These enhancements are nice and all, but what about the early portions of the game when you don't have them? Combat still feels good. Animations are quick, button inputs immediately translates to what happens on screen, jump height is determined by how long you hold the jump button, meaning you could perform both high jumps and short hops. And the game's physics has this floatiness to it that is very reminiscent of the Smash Bros. Series, which is both good for fighting and platforming. I now understand why some people want the knight to make a guest appearance in Smash. Oh, and also, the music's good. Like, really good. And this entire video was a very lengthy way of saying that you need to play Hollow Knight.